Now, hatred of Jewish people is on the rise, as we were hearing in the news. We knew that, of course. Jewish people themselves know it very well. But the charity, the Community Security Trust, has recorded a really huge rise, including 266 violent assaults last year. It echoes the rise that has been seen in recent reports to the police. At a Jewish school in Manchester, pupils there say they're facing increasing anti-Semitism outside the school gates.
A few weeks ago I was threatened and I reported it, and the police have dealt with that. Personally, when I've been walking down the street, I've had stuff shouted at me from cars, and it's had quite an impact.
I get public transport to school and I just feel a lot more wary. Actually coming to school, there's definitely been like an increased police presence around school.
Let us turn to Marion van der Zyl, who's President of the Board of Deputies and British Jews and is here in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming in. One word really stands out from what the Community Security Trust is saying this morning. This is the charity that's brought our attention to these figures. And they use the word celebration. They say a lot of it is in celebration of the October the 7th attacks.
There's been a huge surge in anti-Semitism since the terrorist attacks by Hamas on 7th of October. The surge has been 4,103 incidents. We've just heard the huge increase in the education setting, but 2/3 of that has been since the 7th of October. That must be the most alarming aspect of this report, that there is celebration, such hatred of Jews in such a short space of time. That was the biggest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, a pogrom on the 7th of October. And most of those incidents took place in the days that followed, from the 7th to the 11th of October, when there was a peak of 80 incidents.
Who is behind this? What is behind this?
I would love to be able to give you an answer. I'm afraid it's Jew hatred. It's as simple as that. I wish I could explain it. We're UK citizens. We all love living in the UK. Our values, I feel, are good. But there's just such huge hatred and prejudice against Jews, and of course against other minorities. But it's something that you would not think would exist in this day and age. And you've given us the figures in the education setting, a 200% increase in the school setting. There's a huge surge in anti-Semitism across universities. I went to Leeds University on Monday, where a rabbi had received death threats. He had to leave his house, Hillel House, where Jewish students congregate, was covered in graffiti.
But death threats from whom? Graffiti written by whom? I mean, it is time, isn't it? And in any other group were involved, I think we'd be calling out the people doing it.
Well, absolutely. Who is involved? Well, I'm here, with no disrespect to you, at the BBC, and I was originally also asked to come here to discuss the Apprentice, with what's happened with Dr. Azif.
Yes. So just to be clear, this is as someone who's been taking part in the Apprentice, who it was brought to light that they had a social media account in which they had said hateful things about Jews. The BBC has made it clear that they're not going to take any further part in the series, but, and this is the crucial thing, they have not pulled the series and pulled this person from the series. And you think that connects with wider anti-Semitism? How?
Well, the BBC has a huge influence. People switch on their televisions and their radios. This man has been making a vile anti-Semitic comments. The BBC only took action yesterday when there was a huge complaint. I wrote myself to Tim Davie and to the chairman, and all they've done actually is to edit him out of BBC You're Fired, BBC Two, which I think is due on tonight. Apparently, when it became known about his anti-Semitic tweets after the show, which was filmed last year. He was sent on some sort of diversity and training course. You have to ask why the producers didn't make further inquiries. But if the BBC isn't going to get its own house in order and look at some of these people on our screens, then you have to wonder
I mean,
what's
the
going
BBC's
on.
statement is, they say, Asif took part in specialised training to understand why his posts may cause offence.
Well, as he continued posting right up until a few weeks ago, obviously the training was not very
I should say he has
extensive.
apologised, but
Well,
there we are. He said what he said.
There we are. So who is it? People just don't take action. Do Jews count?
But is that your point, that if this had been an attack on another racial group, you think the BBC would have pulled the whole thing?
I do, but I think there were also some misogynist comments. I think that there was a reference in the Daily Mail to some sort of podcast on, are there any good-looking feminists and things like that. And he's done all sorts of comments. But yes, I think if it was in relation to any other group, I think the BBC would have acted much quicker. And they've only acted because they've had to act.
Right, so it's not just, the point you're making this morning is it's not just the actual attacks that people conduct against Jews, it's also the broader context of how Jews are seen as a minority here by those in authority, including journalists, including the BBC.
Absolutely. And let's face it, anti-Semitism needs to be understood. It's anti-Jewish racism, Jew hate, hatred against Jews. You've got the facts from the CST, which reports to the police and the government. There is the most rapid increase, most of it immediately following the mass murder and attacks on the 7th of October. That celebration that you have referred to is actually a celebration of murder, massacre and hatred. And yes, it's across society, it's across campus, and how Jews are dealt with, even, I'm afraid, by the BBC, it just isn't right. It's enough, and they need to really look at how hatred is dealt with across our screens and on our radio.
Marie van der Zel, President of the Board of Deputies of British Jews, thank you very much.